you cannot be in a stock market and not expect that you're going to have positive years all the time, that you're going to go through investing without kind of experiencing any kind of pain. That is a good problem. I think, first of all, they should listen to classical music because it's so beautiful. I have this website, myfavoriteClassical.com, where I actually share my favorite classical music clips and writings about classical music. And I think if they search the website, I think I created a playlist called Gateway Drug to Classical Music. So that I found the recording, like the pieces that they require the least amount of work for you to listen to and to fall in love with classical music. So I think the reason you want to read about them, because like, as I mentioned, Tchaikovsky, just anything creative comes with its own sense of difficulties. I'll give you a couple stories. In early 1800s, I forget the years, 1815, 1820, forget the year, Beethoven was the biggest composer of the West, like bigger than any other composer. And in fact, when he wrote his Ninth Symphony, somebody said, this is the day the music died because you can't write anything better than this. This is the top of music. And Beethoven had a very interesting impact on other composers. I would argue that he actually set music back many years because everybody looked at him. There was so many composers in his shadows that a lot of them stopped composing. Other ones composed but never published it. There was a composer that lived in Vienna, probably not that far away from Beethoven at the time, Franz Schubert, and he wrote 6,000 pieces of music throughout his life. And he died when he was very young, I think in his early 30s. And most of it will never get published because he was in a Beethoven shadow. Because he was like, how could I possibly publish this when I just heard Beethoven's Seventh Symphony? And the irony of this, today we listen to Schubert and Beethoven at the same time, and we don't say this one is, Beethoven is better than Schubert. They're both beautiful, just differently. Music is it's not math. Personally, I like Schubert's music more than I like Beethoven's music. That's me personally. So let's apply this to investing. Who is the Beethoven of investing? Warren Buffett. I'll give you an example. So for a long time, Buffett used to say that he doesn't invest in technology stocks because he doesn't understand technology. I remember so many value investors who said, I don't buy technology because I don't understand technology. Well, Buffett was at the time 85 years old and they were 25 years old. Maybe they should understand technology. What Buffett was saying, what they should have learned from Buffett is that technology was outside of his circle of competence. That's why he did not invest it. That's the lesson they should have taken out, is that's Buffett's circle of competence. When you're 25 years old, your circle of competence is different. So therefore, maybe you should have invested in technology because it's easier for you to understand it than for 85-year-old. Let me give you another example. There was another composer, Berlioz, who never got classical training as a composer. He started, studying music when he was 12 or 13 years old. And because he did not know the classical rules of how to compose music, he, like Picasso has a saying, you learn the rules so you can break them. Well, he never learned the rules. So when he was breaking them, it was much easier for him. So a lot of times we get exposed to dogma, and that actually reduces our creativity. And there is some value in arriving to your knowledge through first principles perspective, not adopting somebody else's beliefs. There is a terrific investor in Switzerland, Robert Weinel, and we had a dinner with him, and I told him, because Rob never got a classical education in value investing, so I told him, you're like Berlioz. You did not know the rules you were breaking when you started investing. So another thing you can learn from classical music composers, if you're a creative person, is that, as I mentioned, that to create anything worth listening or watching or hearing, to do this, you need to go through a certain amount of suffering, because creativity, suffering is almost like as a part of anything creative. When you work in a construction site and you are there with a stop sign, when it's stop and go, that there is very little creativity in this, very little suffering. When you write in the book, when you write in an article, when you write music, that process is never linear and never pain-free. And all those composers went through their own version of suffering to create this, music. And as investors, this is how I can bring it to investing. you cannot be in a stock market and not expect that you're going to have positive years all the time, that you're going to go through investing without achieving any, kind of experience any kind of pain. That is a good problem. Like if you love investing, that is part of the course. That's, there'll be time when you'll be very upset, where you'll be making, by the way, in the chapter, there's a chapter called Pain Upfront Investing, where I discuss basically a very painful period of 2015, and as an investor. And I wrote this in 2016. I wrote this chapter in 2016, and it was so painful and it was so embarrassing at the time for me that I just wrote it and never published it. And I finally, 6 or 7 years later, it was easier for me to publish it in a book. And I think that chapter, if you are, as you and I are talking, a lot of NASDAQ stocks are down a bunch. And I have a lot of friends who are terrific investors who are struggling right now. And I would really encourage them to read this chapter, because I think, I try to bring, explain what I went through and how you could apply Stoic philosophy to this experience and how it could actually reduce your pain.